Hello everybody. You're very welcome to today's episode on What's the Crack with Joe Wicks sharing about his sugar relapse. So we have some thoughts on this that we wanted to share with you all.
Important to first of all start and say that this is not personal to Joe Wicks.
Really
Um,
important. There's
I
no
think he's a great
judgment.
guy in the fact that he's done a lot for fitness and all of that, even though he exists in the diet culture space. And also, we think it's really important then to talk about some of
Yeah.
the messages and this whole, I suppose, thing around sugar should be restricted. Isn't that right?
Yeah, this idea of like sugar detox and look at like Joe
Mhm.
Wicks is one of many people, but I suppose he does have a large platform. He reaches a lot of people. I think we need to be a lot more cautious about these kind of like, extreme
Blanket.
approaches and blanket approach that this is going to help everybody because for a lot of for a lot of people this like really rigid restrictive um advice, I suppose, because he's sharing his experience and he's putting it out there and modeling as if this is like something that we all should be practicing,
Yeah.
right? If we have
Yeah.
issues with sugar and
Mhm.
excessive sugar consumption. So I think we have to be really yeah, again, it's not
Mindful.
personal. It's not personal to Joe whatsoever. And we still, we are responsible for what we put out. And I think that it's,
100%. And for anybody who
yeah,
doesn't know, I think we should actually
yeah,
explain that he's been on 11 weeks of sugar free and really spouting this
yeah,
whole, have things sugar, demonizing sugar, totally not having any sugar, and even including fruit. And he's got up to 11 weeks. And then he recently shared that he ended up binging and eating a full box of Jaffa cakes, and then that spiraled. And he shared
yeah.
some of his thoughts around what was going on for him. And then we have our own thoughts on that, which is what we're going to share.
Yeah. So just to say as well, like 11 weeks ago, the reason that he embarked upon this sugar detox, to like eliminating it completely, like as you said, even including like fruits,
Mhm.
was because he was experiencing some episodes of binge eating, and he was using this as a solution in his, well,
Mhm.
this is the approach he was taking, and he was like, sharing that. So again, as you said, that was 11 weeks ago, and he's then very recently shared that he's had I suppose, what he calls a relapse, but we'll be talking a
Yeah.
little bit about that
Or
as
a
well.
binge. You did call it a binge as well.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
let's face it, Sinead, you have tried the sugar free. I've tried the sugar free. We're not
Sure,
judging.
look at
How many of us have been there and done that? We're just going to share now our thoughts on it.
totally. Like, I mean, sure, look, at 10 years ago, I would have been advising exactly probably what
Uh-huh.
he's advising. So, like,
Yeah.
again, I'm really not judging that. I was somebody that experienced binge eating for so many years, and I really fully believed that, like, if I just stopped having any, that would completely get like
Mhm.
eliminate the problem. I wouldn't be binging if I just stopped eating the sugar. There was a period where if I just thought, if I just heal my microbiome, my gut microbiome
Mhm.
enough, then it won't then the gut microbes wouldn't be calling for this sugar. Like I really
Yeah.
believed that I
And
had
he
all
does
of
say
this.
that in the video. He does believe that in the video as well.
Yeah,
So I suppose let's address some of the things. Okay. So the first one is the restriction.
yeah.
If you're
The
in
big,
calorie
yeah,
if you're in a calorie deficit and you're in restriction, your body will physiologically and psychologically drive you to eat, and it will want to go for the foods which will give
give you
you the
most bang for your buck.
most
The
bang for your
sugar.
buck into the body. So it's a very smart system to keep us alive. Number
Yeah,
one. So we need to be
yeah,
eating regularly and adequately and lots of variety. Stabilize that. And then we'll look at the other things he said. Okay, so say that is stabilized and we're still having these cravings. How useful is it then to turn around and say, this all or nothing blanket approach and not having sugar? So I think the first
yeah.
thing then we want to, sorry, go ahead, yeah.
No, I was just going to just elaborate a little bit because even though he didn't say that he was going to reduce sugar for weight loss, but he does then make reference in his latest video about how he got lean.
Yeah.
Now, if you get lean and you lose weight, you're likely, now not always, I'm not saying everybody is intentionally, but like it's likely that he was not consuming adequate
Enough.
fuel day to day.
Adequate.
Yeah,
Yeah. He
yeah.
was in a
And
deficit.
we
So we
can
can
make that
presume we
assumption.
can
Yeah,
presume that. So that's the first thing
yeah,
we want to address if we're looking to lessen our cravings and not binge eat, even for example. And then
yeah,
the other side then we want to look at is this notion that sugar is addictive.
yeah.
Because he very
And
much
like,
believes that. Like he's a strong believer that sugar is addictive.
yeah, and you know what? Again, I would have thought that too.
Mhm.
I believed that I was powerless and just addicted to sugar. So I totally get where he's coming at with this because
Mhm.
if we think about it, if we have that belief, of course, we will be congruent with our beliefs. So then we will behave in a way that aligns with those beliefs. So if you believe you've no control over sugar and that you were addicted to that substance and then you have it, of course, then what happens? We will be aligned with those beliefs. We'll
Yeah.
have all the thoughts that are aligned with that beliefs, the all or nothing thinking. And we'll talk about cognitive distortions in a minute, but
Mhm.
that will drive you to eat more and more and more. And then that reaffirms the belief that the belief is true, that you are in fact
Yeah.
addictive, because it's like it's
Yeah.
giving you evidence that you are in fact addictive.
Mhm.
But if we look at the research, and when we look at, like, let's talk about addictive substances, like alcohol and drugs and gambling, for example, and the research that's been done on those substances, or lifestyle choices, whatever
Yeah.
that might be. The research is clear. The more of it that we have, the more we're exposed to that substance, and we get hooked psychologically and physiologically, the more of it we want to have over time. So, like, we need more and more and more to get the same hit, right?
Yeah.
So that's what the research shows about addictive substances. But the interesting thing about sugar is
And
that
food and sugar.
some
Yeah. Hmm.
a lot of the research and binge eating will show that, like, when we are exposed to forbidden foods, so foods that we would typically binge eat on, and when we have permission to eat and consume those foods, and again, this is like all weaving into, obviously, those that are maybe like obviously wanted to recover from binge eating and all the rest of it, the research is quite clear that over time, the urges and cravings and desire and consumption of the sugar
Diminish.
diminishes, it
Yeah.
decreases, it
Mhm.
reduces. You care about it less the
Yeah.
more and more you're exposed to it and
And I
are
think it's
allowed to eat
important
it.
to point out that the way we treat addiction of alcohol and gambling and all of that, you can stop drinking alcohol. You don't need it. You can stop gambling. You don't need it.
Yeah,
But you need to have a relationship with food. And we know that the addiction models that work for those addictions have been tried and tested and do not work when you apply the same principles to
yeah,
food and sugar. So we know
yeah.
that.
We know that.
Um, and then I suppose it's talking about, you were saying about it diminishes. Why does it diminish? Because we also want to bring in another piece of research, which is about food habituation studies. And that is, the more we're exposed to something, we've made peace with it and we're having it, in actual fact, the less we want it. So when we feel in our nervous system and in our mind and our body that I can have sugar, this paradox actually happens that it no longer
I
calls
want
our
it
name.
less. You're
It
like,
goes to,
whatever.
I know, it's like it goes to a place, and we have both experienced this in healing our own
Yeah,
relationship with food and body, and so is hundreds and hundreds of other women who we've brought through intuitive eating. Is the paradox is that whenever you're not dieting and you make peace with the food, the principles of intuitive eating, um, and you're just starting to learn to habituate to food, that all of a sudden it just disappears.
yeah.
And it's
Or it becomes
habituation.
more
Look it up.
manageable in your life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
look it up.
It,
Habituation studies.
And we're not saying that you don't ever want sugar, because also we don't want to be like, because I remember there was probably a point in my journey where I was like, oh, but like I'd love if it just went away completely. But
Yeah,
also let's normalize that, like, as humans, like the
yeah.
first taste bud to that, like,
Develop.
will what's my word, like,
Develop. Yeah.
develop quickly is your sweet taste bud.
Sweet.
Like, it's so easily developed. We are designed to have lean towards the sweet foods because it's nature's sugar, and it gives us the hit that our system and our brain and our system needs. So, like, it's not a bad thing, right, that we might have a desire for some sweetness.
Yeah.
um
I'm trying to think of a
so
study about the rats. What's the study about the rats where they tried to prove sugar was addictive because,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because they basically, gave them the option. They put them into, obviously, whatever cage, and offered them cocaine and offered them sugar. And because all of the rats opted for the sugar, what they then, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard that study where it's like sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine.
mhm,
But actually, what they don't confound for in that research is that the rats were starving from any food. So, kind of circling back to restriction,
mhm,
the rats were starving. So of course the rats went for sugar over cocaine, because that's what's going to keep them alive. Makes
100%.
complete
And
sense.
how they thought that was a sensible study. Where was where was the
I
ethics
know.
in that study that they thought that was a good idea to starve them and then see what they go for? Because you're not going to go for cocaine to give you glucose and fuel your body and
Yeah.
keep you going.
Yeah,
Do you know?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
but I
that
think that's a
research,
good study. The points that we should, if people sometimes cite that we can point out the flaw within that, if you like. And then I think what's key to ask, another thing then that's key to ask is what else might be going on. So, in terms of our emotional needs, in terms of our feelings and our regulation, what else might be going on that that we're blindsided to, if you like, that sugar has become comfort in, or is the neurological pathway that has been developed, that's the go-to that's going to suit you. And
yeah.
it may not be about sugar at all. It's about the fact that this has become, a neural pathway in your brain that is giving you some emotional comfort. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah,
But it's also something that needs to be addressed because then the other study is about the rats in Rat Park.
in Rat Park, yeah,
Yeah.
which is so interesting. And again, it comes back to um, the impact on humans being, or can represent the impact of disconnection and loneliness and lack of purpose. And again, we're not suggesting that Joe Wicks is lonely or disconnected. We're like, this is not about Joe Wicks, but
Yeah.
we're just showcasing the
Yeah.
point that for the study that they've done around that was, again, they had offered the rats, I suppose, they gave rats a time in a cage where they were on their own, they were isolated, they had nothing to do, no purpose, just like, meandering around a cage on their own. And they offered them sugar. And of course, the rats were like soaking up the sugar. It
Yep.
became a total buzz. They were like, that's what we've got to live for is the sugar. But interestingly, when they changed things up for the rats and they put them into what they called Rat Park, where they had other friends, they had lots of colors and games and things to be playing with
Activities,
and things to be
connections,
doing.
purposes, fun.
Well, then they weren't really that arsed about the sugar. They barely looked at the sugar when they were offered that in Rat Park. They didn't care about it. So that's
Yeah,
really interesting to kind of remind us of the impact of emotional unmet needs.
100%.
The other thing that I wanted to touch on was sustainability. And this is something we talk about a lot, isn't it, Shauna, where we kind of say to people, look, we're not telling you what to do in regards to whatever plan it is that you want to do. There's like a million diets you could follow. There's, any amount of people selling you any amount of plans and approaches, right? But the one question that we would say is really worth thinking about is, whatever it is that you make the decision do you believe that it's something you envision yourself doing in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years? So
For the
if we
rest of your life.
ask ourselves that
Mhm.
question with sugar detox elimination completely, do you really believe that you will live a life with zero sugar, not
Mhm.
even fruit? Because
Mhm.
I can tell you, when I went to my Overeaters Anonymous meetings back in the day, where again I believed I was like totally the only way forward was abstinence, um and I remember sitting around a table with maybe like 8 other people, and they were saying, hi, my name is whatever, I've had a relapse, I was abstinent for 5 weeks, I was abstinent for 8 weeks, whatever that is. And everyone would say, oh, like, really well done for the abstinence, just like get back on it now, and you know what you need to do, you need to get back to the
Yeah.
abstinence. But nobody was talking about the fact that, well, maybe the questions we should have been asking is it actually realistic or sustainable or achievable for any of us to exist in this world where we don't have a morsel of sugar ever? So I think that the sad reality then is when Joe was sharing about his relapse, and we might touch on that word in and of itself, but when he shares about that and he's talking about like how crap he feels, and he's going to maybe kind of like make changes and kind of get back into it, I just feel like, oh, it's so difficult for people watching to actually see that maybe maybe the questions we need to be asking is that, sure, this wasn't sustainable to begin with. You didn't fail, Joe. You've done
Yeah.
11 weeks. Like, Jesus Christ, like
I know.
most of us, you know what I mean? Like,
I know.
that's like not realistic at
Yeah.
all. And I'm like, I just want to shout that from the rooftops to be like, what you're advising people to do is not
It's not
sustainable.
sustainable. And that's the key. It's not sustainable, as you said, Sinead. We have to be able to um, do this for life. But do what? Trust our signals.
Yeah.
Trust our body, not drive our behaviors all from a different part of the brain. Because as he said, the minute he walked into that room and the Jaffa cakes were there, it was an unconscious thing that, overrid that part of the brain that was making that those decisions, if you like. And again, bringing it back to, the concept of sensory specific satiety, the fact that when we do learn to trust ourselves, when we do learn to give it to ourselves and we are habituated to it, then what makes us stop? And we often talk about then we have this point of peak pleasure. And what that says is that as we eat more, we do get pleasure. And there will come a point where, as you eat more than that, the pleasure diminishes. And if we can check
Totally.
in enough to be like, okay, I'm at my point of pleasure. If I eat more now, I'm going to get less pleasure and listen to our bodies.
Totally. Because
We will
like,
be able to
isn't it
manage our
very
environment. We'll be able to manage it, having it in our environment and eating it from our internal compass.
totally? Because like, I'm sure if I was, speaking to Joe and asked, like, did you find that full box of Jaffa cakes like satisfying?
Mhm.
It's very unlikely. Maybe the first one gave him a bit of a hit,
Yeah.
but as we know,
Mhm.
when we eat like that in that chaotic, I'm out of control way, is that really satisfying? Absolutely not. So
Yeah.
that's what drives us to keep going, looking, searching for more satisfaction. So we just keep eating, and it's a terrible experience. And I really sending lots of love to Joe as somebody that
Mhm.
I know what binge eating is like, and I know
Yeah.
that out of control experience, and it feels bloody horrendous. So I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And I'm like, really
Mhm.
mean that. And it's so, I suppose the other piece as well that he mentioned and he touched on was the gut microbiome, and like how, like, with the minute he had that, it's like the gut
Thing inside of
microbiome were
him
like,
was like literally turned on and give me more, give me more. Yeah.
give me more, give me more, give me more. And I suppose I just wanted to touch on this part. Like, we tend to deduce that, like, or conclude that what's happening to us is physical. That's what's happening to us is something in our body is driving this. And what we tend to neglect to consider is the impact of our psychology and our mindset, and how the cognitive distortions that so many of us have around food, which is why when we're working with people, we spend a lot of time look at the mind, look at the beliefs that we have, the stories that we tell ourselves about food, because likely what happened for him in that moment was it wasn't his gut microbiome going crazy because he had one Jaffa cake. It was because when he had one Jaffa cake, he hit the fuck it button.
Yeah.
His psychology was like, I'm all or nothing here. So
Yeah.
there's no way I'm having one Jaffa cake. I'm
Might as well
having
be
40 of
hung
them.
as sheep as a lamb.
So now I'm
I'll
all
be
in.
starting
Now I'm eating
again
it all.
tomorrow or next day or whatever, back to my restrictions. So let's go. Yeah.
Let's go. Hit the fuck button. So I suppose I want to remind people that, like, the impact of the food rules that we have and that kind of inflexible mindset around food, that all or nothing thinking, the catastrophizing, the rationalization, the generalizations. Like, we've so many cognitive distortions that we engage in around food. And that's what we want to break down and work on so that we can get rid of those, because they
Yeah.
don't serve us. And it is absolutely possible to get rid of those.
Yeah, no, 100%. And there's a lot of work to be done around that.
And it doesn't happen easy, I will say that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other
Takes
thing you were
time.
saying about was managing the environment is not having it. Just don't have it in the environment. I think we need to
Yeah,
address that as well because that's nuanced. Because there is an aspect to managing your environment, and also it is 100% possible to have it in your environment. And like we know from working with people, the one thing they say is that it's no longer calling their name out of the cupboard, that they learn this
totally.
self-trust. Now, we're not
Yeah,
saying put it all around you, and because there's nudge theory, and when you're more likely to see something in front of you, you might be more likely to have it. But it doesn't mean that you can't have it in the house or you can't have it in the cupboard. And when you're in a
yeah.
well-fed, well-nourished body, you're doing the work on regulating your nervous system, regulating your emotions. It is possible to have sugar and sugary products, chocolates,
In
cakes,
your
crisps,
house
biscuits in your
without feeling
house,
insane.
and
Yeah,
it will find its place in your normal way, whatever way that may be.
totally. Because I will also say that as somebody who did not leave any, like, not a
Mhm.
morsel in the house, and I'm like married to a farmer who's like naturally intuitive eater. He'd like a biscuit with his cup of tea every now and then. Do you think I allowed him to have biscuits in the house for about 15 years? I absolutely did not. I was
Poor
like,
Decky, poor Decky.
poor,
I'm surprised you're
poor
still
Decky.
alive.
I know how he allowed that to happen. I really don't know. But I was like, do not bring it in here. Do we think that that stopped me getting access to those foods? Did that stop me from binge eating on sugar when I got my hand in it? Did it stop me from flying into the petrol station on the way home from work, totally out of control, craving sugar like so intensely that I would buy 5 bars and consume them all on my way home? Did it stop me eating that exact food? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So I want to just remind people that, like, usually for a lot of us, we will want to work towards exposing ourselves to some of that food in our house. Now, we tend to do this gently and we do it at your own pace. So we're not saying go out and fill your trolley with 15 boxes of Jaffa cakes if that's your thing. We do it really slowly, slow, gradual exposure. And as you said, Shauna, it's not about just leaving it all out on the counter. Like, we also want to create like a space, a pause between you and the food. But we don't recommend that you just take this all or nothing approach of get rid of it. Because Joe says that in his video, like, the first thing we need to do is get it out of the house if we're feeling out of control around it. And that tends to not be effective for
No.
the majority.
Yeah, 100%. And even what's coming to mind as well is, you often talk about even Evan not letting him have it as a child. We know children are
Yeah,
naturally intuitive eaters, and I definitely see this with parents who restrict it in the house with kids, is that we know that they are the kids that are standing around the party table, eating and eating and eating and going for the sugar,
totally.
because
They go
it's
to secondary
restricted.
school and
Yeah.
like you're kind of screwed
Mhm.
because all they eat is like crisps and chocolate because they never got them.
Yeah.
They were never exposed to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's probably enough for people
I
to
think that covers
digest around our
lots.
thoughts with Joe, but we would love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear if you found this helpful. And if there's any other episode topics that you would like us to cover, please let us know.
Let us know.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.